I'm live. Hey, everybody, it's Nicole Sauce here, and I'm getting back into the habit of recording podcast episodes about once a week live. I think it's a fun way to interact with y'all. And now that I have StreamYard, I can do it on Float, and I can do it on YouTube, and I can do it on all sorts of different platforms. Today, I'm only seeing the chat from YouTube. I could fix that though, come to think of it. I don't know how to see chat and Float, so sorry, Float people, but I'll get that under control. I'm doing 1% better every week. So I'll get Odyssey up as well in case anybody's hopping up on Odyssey. And I'm just going to let people kind of sign in right now for a little while. And today's episode is all about Hatch Green Chilies. And I have some things prepared for that. But if you end up wanting to participate with a question, I will take your question live. You just have to put it in all caps in the comments of the show, and then I will see it. Now I'm getting to my Odyssey channel. So Odyssey people, I love you, and I'm not going to ignore you today like I always do. Unfortunately, it has the wrong title, but that's okay. You're just going to have to be, there we are. So I have a funny title on Odyssey. Here's the thing: when you stream with StreamYard, you have to set up a new stream in Odyssey, or it takes the title of your last stream. So right now it says "No Bullshit Meets Saucy" on Odyssey. But what we're really talking about is all about Hatch Chilies, and it's an interactive episode. If you want it to be, if you're listening right now and you want to spread the word that we're live, go ahead and do that. Just let people know. I've been interacting with a couple of you all on on whatever that thing is called, the monster one, YouTube. As you can see today, I got my fancy hollow roast cup. We are starting Green Chili Weekend tonight. The official event starts tomorrow, but as you can imagine, there's a lot of setup to do and that sort of thing. So there are people here already. There are people arriving tonight to make sure we're good to go. I even had the last minute thing that happened where something has to be picked up in Smithville, Tennessee at 9 in the morning. Well, 9 in the morning is 1 hour before the event, so I'm not picking that up. And somebody's gracious enough to drive through Smithville on their way here to get that. It's a very important butt, which you will be eating with green chilies and some enchiladas. Anyway, that's all happening. And so today's topic is going to be all about Hatch Green Chilies. If you end up having questions or things you want to say about it, put it in all caps. Because this is also a podcast, though, what I'm going to need to do is pause for a minute and then start the podcast. And then we're just going to jump into the show. Sound good, everybody? I think it sounds good. Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, September 17th, 2021. This is episode 477 of Living Free in Tennessee, and we are getting ready for a big event here tomorrow. I'm super excited to see about 35 of y'all are coming tomorrow to do Hatch Green Chili Day. And the way this has happened in the past is that a lot of the stuff is pre-done, but not this year. And you're going to find out why in this episode. So today's sort of a hybrid thing because I am live recording that. For those listening to the podcast, I'm live recording it or live streaming it. I'm on YouTube, I'm on Odyssey, and that means that I can take questions or comments from the audience. This is particularly important if some of y'all who love to eat Hatch Green's chilies and have good recipes, and I get to the point where we start talking about recipes and how to eat Hatch Green chilies. If you're in here and end up wanting to share an idea for a dish you prepare with Hatch Green chilies, then, we can talk. We can talk because those sorts of things are something that it's kind of fun to facilitate in the network, different recipes that people like to eat. That's what we're going to talk about today. And because it's a live show, I don't have a lot of announcements today. What I have is just a reminder that the Self-Reliance Festival is coming October 23rd in Camden, Tennessee. And this is going to be a really fun event where we've sold about a third of the tickets at this point. I have a lot more tickets available for this event than I would for an event here because John Willis has a lot more space at Special Operations Equipment. We're starting to get some fun demos in, including, and this is going to be really cool, there's beer brewing. We just got beer brewing in, And a couple of other really fun things are going to happen there. If you want to go to that event, just head over to livingfreeintennessee.com. And then what you can do is click, if you scroll down, if you're on your phone, scroll past the first two posts and you will see the button to register, or go to livingfreeintennessee.com/self-reliance festival. That's how you get to it directly. That's the big announcement for today. If you have questions for me or comments, you can send them Nicole@livingfreeintennessee.com. You can also use that for your episode 500 feedback. We're coming up on episode 500. 500 times you've listened to me just like go off about whatever it is I'm going to talk about that day, right? So that episode's coming to celebrate. I'm just wanting to collect from you audio or just a written thing that I'll read about how the podcast or this community has impacted your life in the last almost 6 years. We're almost 6 years in now to living free in Tennessee. I'd love to hear that. I've collected about 10 of these, and it's time to start getting them in because I need to plan how much time that episode's going to take and then get it recorded and share it with all of you. This is your chance to get on the show if you've wanted to be on the show. If my show helped you start a podcast, you should totally email me an MP3. Keep it to under about 2 minutes and be sure to mention your podcast in there. Maybe you'll get some new listeners. You know, that's kind of a fun little game to play. With that, I am going to jump straight into today's show, and that is all about Hatch green chilies. So let's start up with, what are Hatch green chilies? Do you guys know what Hatch green chilies are? Somebody sent me an email making sure I knew what Hatch green chilies were and that they were from a specific place in New Mexico and that I couldn't call them Hatch green chilies unless they were from there. And I think they'd heard me talking about Hatch green chilies and how I might get some from Colorado. Well, that is true. It's kind of like champagne though, where carbonated wine is champagne, but champagne is only from the Champagne region of France. There is some unique flavor that come in grapes from different regions and the way the soils are, but we have a tendency to use the term champagne in the US for bubbly things that come in your glass that are wine, right? Hatch green chilies, when I say Hatch green chilies, I'm referring to a specific kind of chili. The one we're going to get is the New Mexico Big Jim chili, which is a medium hot chili, and they come in varieties of mild, medium, and hot. And then depending on who grows them, like that's kind of a sliding scale. Medium green chilies can be really hot. One year I got the hot ones because I was like, I'll just use fewer green chilies than in whatever dish I'm making. And it'll be like they go longer. I don't have to spend as much money. That was a terrible, terrible mistake. I like hot things. You can almost not make something hot enough for me to eat. But the really hot Hatch green chilies, and then I got it from Diaz Farms, which has since gone out of business. They were so hot. They resulted in this lamb stew. I went on a trip with friends. I made crock pot lamb stew with the Hatch green chilies in it, put 2 chilies in, and it was so hot we couldn't eat it. And I packed up that chili and took it home, and I took it and put it into quart-sized packages. And then from 1 quart size, I would make a gallon stew of some other kind of stew. And then it was finally mild enough that we could eat it. So I always get the medium one. I want the New Mexican Big Jims. That's my favorite variety because it has a cool name. That's the only reason. It's also because I've grown them here. Okay. And that's one that a lot of people know what they are. But it's a hot chili. And it is something that grows really well in New Mexico and in that climate because chilies will grow well into the fall in the desert, and it's hot and there's sun and chilies like that. And they have sort of a unique, like the hot isn't a hot like a jalapeno hot where it kind of goes smack across the face and then kind of dissipates and then there's a lingering tail. It's more of a sweet plus hot flavor. And over the years, I've learned that different farms yield different flavor chilies. Well, as I mentioned before, in the past, I've used the same farm every time. Last year, I went to order chilies, and not only had the owner of the farm died, but his son had died, and that means the grandchildren ended up with the farm. They decided to close the farm. I don't know if they've leased the land out or what they've done. They turned the website into a memorial page, And then they have made it so that the chilies, they kind of guide you to other places. So I've been looking for a new farm, and I put that out on the podcast like a month ago. Somebody finally heard it and sent me recommended farms. I had already ordered chilies from a different source this year. So next year, I now have a list of 2 farms in Colorado. So I guess technically it's not the champagne of green chilies, but I got 2 farms next year to try, and I'm looking forward to that. So that's what Hatch chilies are. And guys, as you're listening to this, in the live feed, if you have questions about Hatch chilies or comments, just go ahead and throw them in the comments. The next question I have is, why do you have Green Chili Weekend every year? This goes back to a trip I took once where I ended up in New Mexico in December. And we got there, and at that point, in New Mexico, the question is red or green. You know what that means? You want the red sauce or the green sauce made from the red chilies or the green chilies? Hatch green chilies aren't necessarily green. If you leave them on the vine long enough, they turn red. And then there are you can make sauce out of the red chilies. And if you get them sooner, they're green. You can make it out of the green chilies. Okay. So when I get my 50 pounds of Hatch green chilies that will arrive today, some of them will be already turning red and some of them are green. I do separate them by color when I use them, but people swear by different flavor differences. I can kind of taste it. Maybe I'm not a New Mexican though, so I'm not accomplished at this particular discernment. And the flavors and the dishes that I was able to taste in New Mexico that year, just out of the dried green chilies and the dried red chilies, were fantastic. I came home with a giant ristra, and I took seeds from that ristra and I grew green chilies here. I grew Hatch chilies from the seeds from the ristra here. And the first year that they came ripe, we had so many green chilies. Because, by the way, Hatch chilies grow really well in Tennessee in our hot climate, right? So I grew those here and ended up starting to research different recipes that you can do with them. And one weekend, they were just kind of all ripe at once. And so casually, I put it out to my network. Hey, we're doing, green chili dishes all weekend long. Come if you want to, whatever, BYOB, and we'll have a good time. And ended up slinging green chili quesadillas off of the grill and grilling. We were grilling them on the grill without, like a drum or a rotisserie, which is what they use in New Mexico to do that. And people loved it. And then we started just talking about in New Mexico, you can go to the farm, you can say, I want 25 pounds, and they put this in this big drum and they'll roast them for you right there. And when they roast it, what happens is the peel comes off of the flesh of the chili. And then you can use that to cook with. If you want it to be a little milder, you can kind of take your knife and squish out the seeds. The seeds are where all the hot lives. Good morning, Dawn Young. Good morning, Buddy. Good morning, Carrie. Good morning, Nate. That's all from the live stream. That's how you get on my show, too. You come to the live stream. And so you can do that and then take them home. It's kind of like in Maryland during crab season, you can go to the grocery store and they've cooked the crab there and you just take crab home for the day. It's a fun time when that crop's coming on in New Mexico. So here we're basically needing to replicate that. And after that first year, decided to make it an annual event. But the next year I didn't get as many chilies because the way crops work, sometimes things do really well and sometimes they don't do as well. So I thought, well, the internet exists, shipping exists. Maybe I'll get lucky and I can order green chilies to be developed here or delivered here. And so I ordered a bushel of green chilies, and same thing. It was going to arrive on like a Thursday. And so I said, hey, anybody who wants to come on out. We're doing all of this stuff with Hatch green chilies. We're going to preserve them. I'm going to show you how to can them and that sort of thing. And people came and we made quesadillas off the grill, and we were still roasting on the grill at that point. And it took all bloody weekend long to roast this one bushel of green chilies because you're doing like 10 at a time. And there's a lot of green chilies in a bushel, and people loved it. And then I realized what I was starting to do was set a foundation for a love of something that comes from another state. And I started learning more about Hatch chilies, and I started finding even more recipes and started cooking in advance. And And by the next year, I had decided I'm going to spend $80 on this drum attachment to put on my rotisserie grill so that when I'm roasting, I can roast more chilies at one time and get them processed faster so that they don't go bad. And we're going to make an actual event out of this thing. About that time, I was starting the podcast. And so the next time I put the word out in advance and said, who wants to go in on some green chilies? And we ended up, Sean from Hack My Solar likes them as well. And he bought some with me. He's like, yeah, I want some of those. And some other people wanted Hatch green chilies. And we ended up with like 3 or 4 bushels of Hatch green chilies. And Sean's daughter came over and she was single-handedly responsible for peeling, I think, 120 pounds of tomatoes. So what we were doing at that point was roasting them, serving all these dishes for people who come to Green Chili Day, making salsa out of them, just canning the chilies themselves, smoking the chilies, and all of these other things. And that meant that we needed tomatoes to make the salsa. So that went into a whole another realm of productivity. I'll tell you what, after that one, I was so exhausted. I was exhausted for 2 weeks after that. And that's when I started saying, it's not a bad idea to order the chilies a couple weeks in advance, get the hard part done, and then Green Chili Day is just a celebration. What that takes away, though, is the people who come and help peel the green chilies for us. Because what I do is I roast them and then we peel them and then we either can them or make them into salsa or whatever. If you're going to smoke them, I smoke them before I roast them. So I'll cold smoke them in the cold smoker and then I roast them and then I peel them and then what I like to do with those is dry them and then turn them into a smoked green chili powder that can be used in cooking. So that's why I have Green Chili Day every year. And it gets, the last couple years, I've kept attendance to 20 people because running an event on your own homestead can be challenging. When you're also cooking and also maybe preserving some stuff, it's even more challenging, right? So I ended up keeping head count to 20. And I last year was letting people spend the night. This year you can spend the night, but this year I also expanded head count to 35 people that we can all hang out and have a good time. And this year I really wanted to think of it more from a fun hangout standpoint rather than I'm teaching you how to do something standpoint. So this year we have a schedule. There'll be a canning demo. I'm actually going to be processing the green chilies, which we'll talk about later in the show. And there will be tours. Tactical can show you how the hydroponic system works. We'll pull the yard games out if it's not raining. We have giant Jenga and we have beanbag toss, right? Cornhole. And we'll have all of that out there. And it's a good time to just hang out with people and talk. I know a lot of people who are coming are bringing seeds that they want to exchange with each other. So it's a chance to exchange seeds. Melissa's going to be here with her spice mixes for sale. If anybody else wants to sell something that's coming here, they totally can. It's just going to be a fun kind of fall celebration on the homestead at a time of year when it's not super cold yet. It might rain, but we have an event tent. We have a covered area, so we're good to go. A subset of people have decided to spend the night and they will get bacon and eggs for breakfast the next morning. And then I'm kicking everybody out because Sunday is sacred day for me and I really want to go to the pool and swim left. So that's why I have Green Chili Day. It totally happened by accident. I could totally go on another trip and discover that I really like crawfish and end up having crawfish weekend at some other point. That's how life happens, especially if there's interest among the community to participate in that. So that is why we have Hatch Green Chili. And for those of you who just joined the live stream, if you have comments, recipes you want to share or whatever about Hatch chilies, just drop them in the comments. Okay. What has been the biggest challenge this year in getting set for the event? I can tell you, y'all who've listened to my podcast for a long time know that I went through a personal transition a few years ago. Green Chili Day was something that 2 of us were working on, and now there's just 1 of us here. And so the first year I did that by myself. I had my friendly neighbors, the holler neighbors, helping me, but it was already down to a process of who does what to get ready in advance. That was a really hard year for me. I was really glad I kept head count to 20 that year. And that has continued to be a bit of a challenge, which is getting ready for the event and getting everything set up, with not a great idea of always how many people are going to be there because people sign up and don't show up. And also, this is what has happened in our post COVID world, right? Delivery's been an issue. Delivery's been an issue. And because there are challenges to delivery, you don't know if you're going to get stuff. So last year, when I went to order green chilies, and I started looking in early August, everybody was sold out in August for the whole season. And I was like, what's up with that? And what was up with that wasn't that they were sold out. It's that they couldn't move them. They couldn't move them. So I finally found a farm, paid double what I'd ever paid before for chilies, and we had green chili weekend. I got them, I think 2 weeks or a week before. I was just like, "Whenever you can get the chilies here, get the chilies here." And then they said they were going to, and they didn't send it for 3 weeks, and I finally got the chilies after much worry just in time for green chili weekend. That was last year. That same weekend, we also did a chicken processing workshop right after. You'll notice I'm not doing that this year because the other challenge has been too much at one time. So this year, I got ahead of the curve, ordered my chilies. They were supposed to arrive right after Labor Day. Before Labor Day. FedEx screwed up. What was supposed to take 3 days to get here, 8 days in, I called the store and said, "What's up with my order?" And they said they'd reship it. I said, "Okay, I'm going to pay for expedited shipping because if I'm getting green chilies the same week as the event, I need to get them a day earlier so I can start roasting so that we can pre-make the food that gets served to people on Saturday. So I'm going to pay the expedited shipping." So I paid $65 extra to ship these chilies. On Tuesday, my chilies did not ship. They did not ship. On Wednesday morning, I called them and they said, "Oh, yes. Yours are going out today. We got the 3-day shipping out yesterday, and some of the 2-day shipping didn't go out." I'm pissed. I paid $65 to get 2-day shipping so I could get these on Thursday because they ship on Tuesday. I'm getting them Friday, I think. I might not get them. They're not here yet. They've made it to Louisville, Tennessee. That's what I know. But they are not on a truck for delivery right now. So if I don't get them today, it's because I paid for expedited shipping and the vendor decided to prioritize 3-day shippers over people who paid for expedited shipping. I know what they're thinking. They're thinking the more chilies that get there unperished, right? The fewer orders we have to redo. But they do say if you pay for 2-day shipping, they guarantee that they'll get there and not be bad. And if you do 3-day, they don't guarantee that. But I had called them and said I was having an event, and that's how they did me. And I understand they're probably really busy and they had this big cluster of a delivery thing, but you got to be better than that. So I'm not going to be recommending them as a vendor. I have 2 farms to try next year that will hopefully do a better job of customer service because when somebody pays for expedited shipping, that means they want it faster. So my biggest challenge has been getting the chilies in the last 2 years. And I expect that to continue to be a challenge unless I have somebody coming to the event driving from New Mexico or Colorado who can just bring them. And one of these years, I might just drive out and get them. I don't even know. So that has been the biggest challenge. Okay, I have a question from M on the live feed saying, "Will you do any freeze-dried green chilies?" The answer is I am planning to do this. What I have done in the past is smoke the hatch green chilies, roast them, skin them, and then put them in the Excalibur food dehydrator, dry them, and then run them through a spice mill to make a smoked chili powder. This year, I'm going to do all that. Instead of putting it in the Excalibur, I'm totally going to freeze dry them and make that powder that way. Because what I've learned about freeze drying spices is that they're much easier to powder and they retain a lot more of that like pungent flavor. And that's been something I've experienced with basil. I haven't done a video about that yet, but the flavor really is well preserved in freeze drying versus drying for herbs. And I'm sure that's going to flow over to um, the whole thing of chilies, right? And M saying our Mexican grocer carries them. Maybe that would help you. That would help me. Also, Kroger here locally was bringing them in, but I didn't understand how to order them. So maybe I'll order them through Kroger. I don't know. I've got 2 direct farm sources now that I really want to try, because if I can support a small farm in this, I'm going to do that. Okay. Next question is, this one's good. What are your favorite recipes? This is where we talk about why, the real why of Hatch green chilies, right? Every year I serve a couple of things. First of all, that thing I keep telling you about, the smoked chili powder, that thing, it doesn't matter what chilies you do this with. The flavor you get on a pre-smoked chili that you dried and turned into powder is far superior than almost any spice you can buy on the market if you make your own. It is so, so tasty. So that's one of my favorite things to do with it. And you can use that as a base for an enchilada sauce. And it's a really good enchilada sauce. And the way you do that is you mix it with some vinegar and some tomato and the chilies, and you concentrate that all down. You can add sugar if you want to. I usually don't because I'm keto, but that makes a really good enchilada sauce. You can use tomatillas instead of tomatoes if you want to. I have tomatoes, so it'll be a red enchilada sauce if I do it that way. I also sometimes buy enchilada sauce at the store, but that base as an enchilada sauce is over the top good. That is totally over the top good. And on this topic, I have two 3-legged cats. That sounds like an interesting channel. Do you smoke the peppers, then rehydrate, then powder? No. So when I smoke the chilies, I put them in a cold smoker. So it's below 40 degrees in the cold smoker, probably. Depends if it's hotter outside, it's hotter, but the smoke's not heating them. And I do that for about half a day. So I'm running smoke through a tube into a smoker. And then I take the chilies out, roast them, peel them, and they're sort of like a wet mass of chili pulp at that point. And I dry them and I grind them. And when I use it, it's just like using any other dried spice that you can use, right? Which is dried, and you put the powder in your stew that you're making or whatever. And so I don't rehydrate them. If I freeze dry a chili whole without turning it into powder, I could feasibly rehydrate it and it would be chili shaped, right? But I might even experiment with that just for the fun of it. I don't know what that would look like, but what I'm doing is turning them into spices. So if you get extra, I'd buy some of the smoked chili powder. Okay, so I know what Em wants for Christmas now. That's good. Other recipes I really like with green chilies is the green chili stew. And I had this in New Mexico once. And basically what it is a burger or a ground beef based stew with garlic and onion in it. And that's it. And then a lot of Hatch green chilies. And you basically, what I do is I brown up the ground beef, put it in a crock pot, slow cook it with the green chilies that are also ground up, and the onion and the garlic and some cumin and salt to taste, and that's it. I keep it really simple. There'll be a little bit of broth in there too. You can add tomato if you want to. It's also good with tomato. But what you end up with is this very thick stew that you then serve by sprinkling green onions that are cut up over the top, or maybe a little cheese on top. You can serve it with tortilla chips or tortillas. You can put, I don't know if I already said cheese, but yeah, I did say cheese, sprinkle cheese over the top. It's a really tasty stew. And if you are at my event and you're ketogenic as an eater, which I know about half of you usually are, that one's your safe go-to dish, right? I haven't added, you don't have to take the corn chips to eat it, right? So other than that, it's got very low carb count, and it's a really good highlight of how the chili and the ground beef interact. So that's one of my favorite things to do with it. And we'll have that tomorrow at the event. The other thing I like to do is green chili enchilada casserole. green chili enchilada casserole, instead of rolling individual enchiladas, I do them in layers. This works really well, by the way, when you're feeding 35 people. And what it is a layer of corn tortilla, and then cheese, and then a meat of some sort, and then green chilies, then enchilada sauce, then tortillas, and then cheese. See how that works? It kind of goes together like a lasagna. Some other things I like to add to that are sauteed onions and garlic, sauteed squash, like zucchini squash, if I can get my hands on it. But I'm getting this comment from the live feed. Oh my OMG, that sounds so much easier than rolling. It is so much easier than rolling. It'll make you make enchiladas again, right? Um, so it turns into a big pan that you just cut into squares and feed to people, and you can put a dollop of sour cream on top or not. You can add salsa to it or not. It is fan flippin' tastic. One of my favorite ways in the whole world to have Hatch green chilies, but it is not ketogenic friendly because you heard me say corn tortillas, right? You can do that, by the way, instead of the tortillas, layering in zucchini or something. And if I were going to do that, I would probably freeze dry the zucchini and then have it soak up the moisture, which is a new trick I've learned with the freeze dryer in my life. So that is another one of my favorite recipes. Green chilies on quesadillas. Super, super simple. Two three-legged cat says that'd be good with rabbit too. Yep, it would be. It'd be good with any meat. This year I'm gonna have a smoked pork butt as the meat base for the green chili enchiladas. Okay, the next one I was just saying. What was I saying? Oh yeah, the quesadillas. So those just come straight off the grill, and a really good way to have a Hatch green chili is to just roast them, skin it, put a quesadilla on the grill, which is a corn tortilla or flour tortilla with cheese, and then put the chili in it, fold it in half, and you have a quesadilla. Super fast, super easy to do. I don't know if we'll do those tomorrow or not. It depends on how many of my Hatch green chilies arrive in it, a ripe enough shape for me to be able to serve that many, because there's a minimum of 35 quesadillas coming out tomorrow. No, probably not, because some people are ketogenic eaters. And once again, unless you have a low carb tortilla, that doesn't work. You can get low carb tortillas though. The salsa recipe that is in Cook With What You Have, my cookbook, is something, it's what I use for Hatch green chili salsa. And the way it works is it's tomatoes, it's chilies, it's sweet peppers, it's onions, it's garlic, it's cilantro, some vinegar, and you just make that and you can it or don't can it, and it's really tasty. If you're not going to can it, you can reduce the vinegar that you put in, and it's a little less tart. But we are making that chili. What I like to do though with that recipe, if you have my cookbook, or if you're a member of my podcast, by the way, it's also in the recipe of the week. So if you go in there and look up salsa, you'll come up with some. If you're logged in, you'll come up with posts on the salsa, and you'll get the salsa recipe. I have tried like 10 salsa recipes, by the way, to get to that one. What I do is, instead of adding the sweet peppers, I just do 100%. So if it's like 5 and 6 cups, 5 cups of one, 6 cups of the other, I do the whole amount in Hatch green chilies. Yep. And then that makes a really spicy but tasty salsa. It's not the only salsa we do to can here, but it's, I'm out of Hatch chili salsa. I'm not out of last year's other salsa because I use jalapeno peppers too in that. I add cumin to it as well, salt and pepper, that sort of thing. And it cans up in like 15 minutes, water bath canner. And we end up with homemade salsa all year long here. And so we'll, of course, be serving chips and salsa and pork rinds for our keto friends at this event tomorrow. So those are some of my favorite recipes. Some other things that have come up though that people have done. Brian in Tennessee makes a custard based ice cream. So he came and got Hatch chilies for me last week, and he makes a custard at home, which is sort of like eggs and milk and sugar and all that. And then he's bringing an ice cream maker, and we'll have green chili ice cream. There may be green chili apple crisp here to go with the ice cream, and green chili cornbread. So you just make the cornbread with green chilies. And then last, and not keto at all. This one's really good. You got to hear this. You're going to love it. You're going to love this so much. Homemade macaroni and cheese, like with cheese sauce and cheese and green chilies. Green chili mac. That's right. It's a really tasty dish. We are serving that tomorrow. It's actually not homemade. It's restaurant homemade uh, mac and cheese, but we're keeping one aside with no green chilies on it because we got somebody coming to this event who doesn't like spicy food. I want to make sure that person is able to eat. I'm also putting some unspicy taco meat aside so they can have tacos. Because you got to be nice to your friends, right? And I know I have one friend who comes every year, is super enthusiastic, really fun to be around, does not like spicy food. So we'll be having green chili mac. Those are some recipes I like. If you have recipes you like, I want to know what they are because I guess I should probably tell you, and I'll write this one down in a post soon. The powder base, I use about 2 tablespoons of powder, about 2 cups of tomato sauce, a quarter cup of vinegar. I use garlic powder, about a teaspoon of garlic powder. I use cumin, and I use salt and pepper to taste. And I simmer that down till the sauce is thick enough. That is how I make enchilada sauce from scratch. So that's another really fun use of hatch green chilies. My final question that I have in is, how do you preserve them? How do you preserve hatch green chilies? You know, the cool thing about recipes of preserving hatch green chilies is that they actually admit you need to boil high pressure, like low acid food before you eat it. So if you want to preserve hatch green chilies and you're not making salsa, so the salsa recipe has vinegar in it, it makes it a high acid food. You water bath can that. Another way to preserve them is to pressure can just the chilies. And what you do is you roast them, peel them, pack them in a jar, pour boiling water over it, and you pressure can that. And depending on your altitude, you pressure can it at different amounts of pressure. Here's the deal. Hatch green chilies are really basic. They are really not acidic. And so you need to be careful with your times, with your altitude and all of that. And then they recommend, before you use them on the way out of the jar, boil them for 5 to 15 minutes, depending on what you're doing. What I do when I'm going to use them, if I'm going to make a nice like beef stew and I want to throw some hatch chilies in and I'm going to make it in my pressure cooker, I won't boil them first for that. I will be pressure cooking them for 25 minutes anyway. The reason you're cooking them on the way out of the jar is that if for some reason you did not handle things correctly and some botulism was in there, that will break up the botulism toxin. And that's true for any pressure can thing. So corn, beans, squash, green chilies, right? Soups, stews, stock, fish, all of that should be boiled on the way out. But that's another way to preserve them. Drying them in the Excalibur is great, but you know what else you can do is take your thread and needle and make them into a string. And that's why ristras even exist. So what you can do is just sew, and there's a way to sew them so they end up ristra shaped. It's not that hard. You end up not sewing thread, by the way, like that wax coated strong thread. You can string those in a circle and make your own ristra. Super easy to do. Hang it up somewhere where it's dry and dark, and you'll end up with an unlimited supply. Well, probably more dried chilies than you're going to use in a year if you do a big old ristra of that. And or if you don't want to do that, you can just do linear chilies, string them up somewhere, again, dry, dark. You'll get better flavor out of doing it that way versus the Excalibur. And in that case, you don't roast them first. You just string them up and you're done. And then, of course, a really easy way to preserve them that I do is I will roast them, peel them, and put them in 1 cup humps of chilies, which is about how many I use per crock pot of stew or whatever else I'm making. Taco meat, whatever. They're really good in taco meat. Homemade taco meat. Oh, so good. Onions, garlic, green chili. Taco meat would be ground beef or ground venison, some cumin, salt and pepper to taste, and a little bit of tomato, and you have great tacos. Anyway, I do them in 1 cup humps, And then I throw them in the freezer. And you can just take them straight out of the freezer. Don't even have to defrost them. Throw them in that browned ground beef or whatever you're doing, or stew. Done. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode on the Q&A on Hatch Green Chilies. This year is going to be a great year. They're arriving later today, I hope. Fingers crossed, because if not, then we're eating last year's Hatch Green Chilies, because I still have some saved just in case. And if you do like the show and want to support the work I'm doing, you can do it in two ways. One, buy your coffee at hollowroast.com. And if you're really cool, you already have a nice red mug with your name engraved on it, right? We'll be getting those ready for Christmas again this year. Two, become a member over at Living Free in Tennessee. With that, go out, make it a great week. And I'm always a little silent after that, guys, on the live stream, because I can continue to talk to you online right now, but I like to have that audio gap there so that when I'm editing for the podcast, it's a little bit easier. So, amazing topic. Can't wait for the podcast. Just got a call. Yeah, Dawn, you missed it. That's okay. The podcast will be out later today. I've got somebody standing by to produce it for me. I'm actually going to give him a test and see if he can edit it in. I'm just out of curiosity. So we're going to give that a go. So you may end up hearing this conversation in the podcast, but probably not. He's pretty good at what he does. And I can tell him there's a point where the podcast starts, there's a gap, and then I talk to y'all on the live stream afterwards. Are you guys liking these live streams? I'm really wondering. It's something that I did a lot last year, and then I kind of put it on pause while I was getting some things together here at the homestead. And here's the deal. Full confession. The reason I wasn't live streaming wasn't because it's harder to record my podcast live, because it's not. You just saw me just do the whole podcast. Sometimes I make a mistake and have to edit it. That didn't happen this time. But when I'm doing things on the homestead, you get really sweaty and dirty. And I would be like sitting down to record my podcast, and I just looked like crap. Like dirt on my face or whatever. And it's video. You can see what I really look like or what I'm really wearing. So that's good. So Carrie says he digs the stream. I like having that interaction with y'all too. I think I will start scheduling which day I'm going to do this a little bit more in advance, so you know what's coming. The only wild card I have right now is remember last year when I caught my roaster on fire? Apparently that's an annual thing now. So yesterday we caught the roaster on fire. This is the new roaster, by the way. And the good news is it wasn't as damaging as when I caught the other roaster on fire. So we caught it. It didn't get like creosote all over everything. Hi, Aaron. Oh, hi, Aaron. I was wondering who you were. It seemed like you knew me. Yeah, so Freedom, Arizona. The title in Odyssey is not right. It's my fault because I forgot that I have to manually set that up and then live StreamYard, because StreamYard does it automatically everywhere else but Odyssey. So it's just an Odyssey glitch. So sorry about that. John Willis is not with me today. They have like this totally confusing thumbnail over on Odyssey. I might have to delete that video and just upload a copy of the YouTube. Anyway, what was I telling you? I don't even know what I was telling you because I got all distracted by that thing. Anyway, I think I'm going to start programming them in advance. It's fun to have that back and forth. But my roaster caught on fire. That's what I was telling you about. So the roaster caught on fire, and I no longer have a roaster that I can use to roast large amounts of coffee. But here's the deal. The roaster that caught on fire, it caught on fire because I think a switch went out, which is not a big deal. It didn't get creosote all over, so I don't have to pull everything apart and clean it with a toothbrush, which is what I had to do with the last one. It took me days to do that last time I had a roaster fire. There was not coffee in the chamber. We had dumped the coffee out, and then there was one bean left in the chamber. That caught on fire, and the elements did not turn off. The elements did not turn off. And they got really hot, and I couldn't get them to turn off. And then I did the emergency override, and I don't think that turned them off either. Bad. So then luckily there's an emergency override, but then that causes the fan to turn off. So I turned that off, but the fan was not blowing through the elements. So I may have burnt out the elements. It's okay. I have extra elements here. And I need to troubleshoot if it's the switch. But here's the timing of this situation. I was upgrading my roaster. If you're on my Hollow Roast email list, you'll see that I'm getting an upgraded roaster. So I'm upgrading the existing roaster to have a bigger roasting chamber because the manufacturer has changed some of their designs and are able to get for the same size blower more beans. And I knew going into Christmas roasting season that I want that, and it also deals with a chaff issue. The other thing is when I dump the beans, I do this motion from right to left with my arm, which I don't have to really explain because this is not going on the podcast. And I'm starting to get tennis elbow from that. And the new one, it just has a door I lift and the beans come out and they go into the cooling table. Well, guess when that's going to be done? If everything goes on time, which things rarely go on time, that was supposed to be done this weekend, that upgrade. And then I was supposed to get in my car, drive to Kansas, hang out for a half a day or a day, come home with an upgraded roaster. So here we are, roaster fire, can't use the roaster, want to schedule my live streams, might be driving to Kansas, can't live stream from the car very, very stably. So next week, I probably won't be scheduling it in advance unless I do it Monday. And other than that, I'm really, really, really hoping that I can go get my roaster next week because otherwise, I'm basically roasting on a tiny little roaster, 2 pounds at a time, which I can do right now. But if I get some really big orders in, which I usually do, I'll be emailing people saying like, do you need it all at once? Or can I send you 2 pounds and then kind of catch the rest in a week or however that rules. Yeah. The double rule strikes again. Two is one is none. My original plan on this was because I kind of, so it's an upgrade, but I end up with 3 roasters at the end of this. I'm planning to sell one at the end of this whole thing. But what that looks like is Nicole doesn't know when she's spending 3 days or 4 days on the road. And it's really hard to schedule anything in that situation. I do want to say next week, I'm interviewing Ken Berry, probably, who is, the proper human diet, Ken Berry. And I'm doing a Q&A show. And I'll send this out via email as well. I want everybody's questions that they have for Ken Berry in advance that they can get me so that I can get it to him and he knows what questions we're going to ask. I believe we're going to be recording that show on Tuesday, whether or not I'm driving to Kansas. Not 100% sure yet if that time is confirmed. And if not, we'll delay it a week. He has a new series coming out on how to cure diabetes, which is pretty cool. I'll throw those links in the show notes to that if I can find it. And definitely want to check that out, especially if you're interested in sort of the nutritional aspect. This all comes at a time when they've discovered that weight loss works better if you don't mess with your glycemic index by spiking your sugars, which is kind of what the keto lifestyle and paleo stuff is all based on, right? Is not spiking your sugars in your blood. Easier to lose weight, easier to find that ideal weight. So that's happening too. Wanted to throw that out to y'all while you were here. I am going to sign off now because I got to go make some enchilada casserole, my friends, and I'll see a lot of you tomorrow. Make it a great week.